Welcome back to another AP World History video lecture, this time on World War I. So World War I is one of those things in history that everybody loves studying. It's sort of like the Civil War or World War II. It's got a certain romanticism to it. I know, like really? Romanticism? World War I? But yeah, it really does. Take a look at all the amazing movies that we have that are coming out about World War I. But you know, World War I is really amazing in history because it really demonstrates all these huge, quick changes that were happening in the global system at the beginning of the 1900s. And you know, these changes had been based upon new institutions and historical patterns that have been happening throughout the 1800s. Well, how do we figure out how World War I got started? Let me give you the causes of World War I. They include militarism, alliance, imperialism, and nationalism, or the main causes. Got my little pun there. So you might notice that militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism are a great acronym. And yes, they do stand for Main. And that's a good way of remembering the big causes that led up to World War I. In fact, Europe had been building these throughout the 1800s in order to go out and gain natural resources for finished products and mass production. But I'm not a big fan of the whole notion of Main being our way of understanding how World War I got started. Why not? Because remember that the big change in the European point of view was the development of social Darwinism and scientific racism. So here's my thesis for this presentation. European imperialism and the viewpoint of each nation that they were the saviors of civilization, that's what led to global conflict. It was based upon the belief that each European national identity was best suited to lead the global system. That's what led into the conflict of World War I. Okay, so let's get to the causes of World War I. You know, World War I is often described as a combined result of those main causes: militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. Here's how the story goes. Europeans had developed mechanized weapons. This allowed them to go out and conquer colonies for the exploitation of raw resources for the mass production of finished goods. Europeans then justified this through national and racial identity. And Europeans then formed alliances that would allow them to defend their territories without having to go to war. However, this powder keg of causes eventually blew up when all these elements combined together. There is good evidence for this story. Europeans had developed weapons like the Gatling gun for mass and total destruction. The Germans had developed the technology of U-boats or submarines to control the seas and blockade countries. Europeans developed airplanes as a military way to dominate the skies, and tanks were eventually developed to break down what we're going to talk about later in the presentation called trench warfare. In fact, the Germans and the French even developed poison gas in order to break down the defenses of their enemies. In the midst of all this competition, France, Russia, and Serbia developed an alliance to protect one another. And then Germany, Austria, and Italy developed their own alliance. Then in this context, Serbia, who wanted their own nationalist identity, had developed a homegrown terrorist group called the Black Hand. One of its members, a man named Gabriel Princeps, went into Austria-Hungary and assassinated the Archduke Ferdinand and his wife Sophie. Most people associate this event with the beginning of World War I, or maybe it was because of the alliance system that it was then triggered. Serbia called on Russian protection, Austria then called on German protection. But this neglects the bigger picture. None of this would have existed without the Europeans' desire for colonies. None of that would have existed without the competition over natural resources. And none of this would have been so quickly justified without the belief in each country's national and racial superiority. Okay, so what happens when we get into World War I, the conducting of it? World War I began with the Germans believing they could quickly end the war. Their belief was based upon the Schlieffen Plan. This plan, developed by the German general, Schlieffen, was that the Germans would invade France through neutral Belgium and take France out of the war. This would mean that Germany would then focus on Russia. They would not have to have what's called a two-front war. However, this move instigated Britain to enter the war over fears of losing Central Europe to the Germans. And then both sides ended up settling into a new form of strategic warfare called trench warfare. Both sides used over 300 square miles of trenches to fight each other. Soldiers literally lived in these trenches. They actually built homes in these trenches. They would use machine guns to mow down charging soldiers. Tanks, airplanes, poison gas were all used to break down the trenches. But none of this worked to achieve these ends. Governments adopted a belief in what's called total warfare. This meant that everything was dedicated to winning the war. This included widespread propaganda. Governments played on gender stereotypes, fears of us versus them, and social belonging to promote massive conscription or drafting of the civilian population. The war tended to be fought in France in the trenches. There were theaters of war in North Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and India. And the war led to new atrocities never seen before. A new phenomena came out of Turkey called genocide. There had always been horrible atrocities of humans against each other during wartime. But in Turkey, the Young Turks claimed that the Armenians were no longer really Turkish. Rather, they were seen as an internal cancer. The claim was that Christian Armenians had sided with the Orthodox Russians. Now, there's some truth to this. There were some Armenians who did, but the overall population hadn't. Armenians were quickly dehumanized, called cancerous, and many were exiled. Others were put literally in caves, and then fires would set outside, the smoke leading inside, causing asphyxiation. This might cause you to think, wow, this looks very similar to what Hitler did to the Jewish people in World War II, and you're right. In fact, there are documents showing that Hitler looked at this genocide and saw that it had positive potential. To make matters even worse, soldiers passed on diseases like the Spanish flu. As they returned home, they spread the disease due to actions and poor sanitary conditions at the time. So how did the war end? Well, America had decided to remain neutral in the war, but this changed in 1917. Germany had been using their U-boats to ram... Well, America had decided to remain neutral in the war, but this changed in 1917. Germany had been using their U-boats to ram military vessels. This changed in 1915 when the Germans used their U-boats to attack civilian ships, including the Lusitania. There were over 100 Americans on that ship. Now, one thing just to keep in mind, the Germans had been blockading Britain from the continent. So what Britain did was they came up with an idea. They stored military weapons on civilian ships like the Lusitania. The Germans found this out, and that's why they began attacking these ships. The real problem, though, came when the British intercepted what was called the Zimmermann letter. This was a letter from the German ambassador Zimmermann to the Mexican government. The letter promised the Mexicans that if they would keep the United States out of the war by invading them, they could get their lands back that they lost in the Mexican-American War in the 1840s. This instigated an American entry into the war, and with these huge number of new American forces, the Germans were overwhelmed, and it led to an end of the war in 1919. The war then ended with the Paris Peace Conference. The big four allies met, Britain, France, Italy, and the United States. At the time, because the U.S. had been such a leader in ending the war, President Woodrow Wilson was a rock star, and he led the conference with something called the 14 points. Now, these included a lot of details, but there are big ones that you need to remember, these 14 points. The big ones are the following: free trade of the seas, open diplomacy, reducing weapon production, and the creation of what was called the League of Nations. Note that each of these was attempting to dismantle the main causes of World War I. Well, back at home in the United States, the Senate of the United States decided not to join the League of Nations, so this undermined U.S. leadership. The European leaders, Georges Clemenceau from France, David Lloyd George from Britain, and Vittorio Orlando from Italy, all just decided to pursue a different solution. In the Treaty of Versailles, they demanded that Germany pay back all the damages of World War I, and the three leaders worked to simply reorganize the colonial system to simply keep it going. So, what are our takeaways? Number one, World War I was a result of the imperialist and nationalist institutions established during the 1800s. Number two, the fighting of World War I changed societies due to total warfare and mass destruction caused by mechanized weapons coming out of the Industrial Revolution. And last off, number three, World War I really doesn't give us an ending. You know, at the time, there was a quote by Woodrow Wilson that World War I was going to be the war to end all wars. That didn't happen. World War I simply ended up reorganizing, not changing the imperial system. That was going to establish the groundwork for another great global conflict in just about 20 years later. See you in class.